Art in the Borderland, Defying Stereotypes. El Paso artist Liliana Reza Marquez is an exceptionally unique young artist whose paintings not only have a cultural feel but also promote a bit of that magical realism, like those suggested by Kahlo, Orozco, and the muralist of Lincoln Park. In this image here, Bouquet of Hope, you see the essence of that magical realism, of those vibrant colors that despite the current conditions, everything is going to be okay. Her painting here, The Three Levels of Knowledge, demonstrates the brilliance of a figurative, almost allegorical conception regarding distinct levels of cognition. This work has been acknowledged and is on display at the U.S. Library of Congress. Whatever those three different levels may be is difficult to interpret, but at least it gives one the sense that an exploration through life requires different levels of perception, different levels of thinking, different levels of analysis. It is a painting that doesn't necessarily have that stereotypical Mexican feeling. Not necessarily that that's a bad thing, but at least it broadens the artist's perception of the world. The following image, Echoes of Unity by Marquez, also depicts not necessarily a division, but a synchronizing unity between two communities. In line with the previous two presentations, you will notice how the conception of faith is very much evident in this presentation. The painting provides that central marker of the Virgin Mary right atop the image, but the image still infers many things that are not immediately evident. In addition, the painting, despite all of its realist features, is still primordially idealistic. At the bottom right is an image of protesters on top of an adobe structure's roof, and are paralleled by protesters seemingly present atop the church. There is, after all, a safety marker that faith and the church can shelter everyone from evil. But no matter how joyous and convivial Juarez seems to be, it still brims with an acrimonious fire spread out across the sky. Marquez brilliantly bridges those ideals that brilliantly bridge two cities, two countries. The essence of mariachi music spills outward onto the north, outward onto the south. Amidst the cathedral on the Juarez side is a diversity of food options, with a bakery, corner store, and cotton candy cellar. Sports and agriculture are evident amidst the city of El Paso, while cheers and colorful homes detail the Juarez landscape. There are simply so many details that are reciprocated between both cities, especially if one overlooks the economic distinctions. What Marquez details above all is not precisely an us versus them type of mentality, but a unified sense of being. Observe an impromptu interview with the brilliant artist in describing the essence of her painting, Echoes of Unity. All right. Well, hi, Lily.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this interview. I know interviews are always or can be nerve-wracking.
Mm-hmm.
But how are you today?
Good, and you?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited to talk about your beautiful, beautiful painting. And I believe you entitled it Echoes of Unity?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that. Tell me about the title.
Because of Unity, I feel like a right title because you can see throughout the painting that there is a sense of union between the two characters. And I don't know, like the music and the vibes that it gives you, like it's just in there. I don't know. I feel like that.
Are there any instances, I mean, I didn't note them because usually when we think of two cities between borders, we think of things in the antagonistic sense, right, of a us versus them type of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't quite note that in the picture. I think maybe that's one of the beautiful things, one of the things I appreciate is that synchronicity of both. Or am I missing something? Are there elements still of that struggle between the borders?
I try to hide it because I personally I know that there exists like these struggles, but me as a person I don't see it in my daily life, so it's not something that I have like very present too. But I, for example, have like little people in the corners in there, like in the painting, like when you actually see it more closely, you can see that there is words like justice and justicia from the other side, and um, I don't remember all the words, but I try to it put like some feelings that there is like a protest in the two cultures. Also putting in the El Paso side, at the side of the church, like a little tiny people that is like sleeping in there because it's a homeless man.
Oh, I see. I noticed that. I noticed that. And actually, the homeless is on the right side. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mm. Do we have any instances of homelessness on the left side, on the left hand side?
I have the immigrants that are right here. Like I know from the news and everything that there is like a lot of immigrants that come here to El Juarez to cross the border and come to El Paso.
Very nice, very nice. I did notice, and this is something that seemed interesting to me. I did notice you have a couple of almost like cheerleaders there in front of the church.
Yeah.
And I know, which is interesting, right? Because usually when I think of cheerleaders, and this is of course my ignorance, I usually think of cheerleaders in the sports orientation of
They're not actually cheerleaders. It's I don't remember exactly their name, but it's a tribe, una tribu from El Juarez. So they do like these dances that are like a kind of religion thing.
Tell me the name of the tribe again.
I don't remember, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Okay.
But I have seen them, so I know that they are in the Juarez. I have also seen them in Mexico City, and they do like these rituals
I
to
see.
their boats.
Do you find that essence of tribes people, of like indigenous tribes people? Do you find that maybe a unique identity to the Mexican side more than the U.S., or do you think it's evident in both and maybe perhaps just different?
I do know that there are like the Native Americans here, but I don't see them like too very different from the people that are already living here. But in Mexico, like you can really see that they have like their own control, their own places, and everything like that. I was in a trip to Chiapas the last summer, and they do have like their own city. You can't go in there, so they're like separate from everything else, and they have their own goats, traditions, and things like that. So I do feel them like the natives in Mexico, like they have like a more unique perspective than their natives in here.
Awesome, awesome. That's so interesting. So it's off limits to the general population, at least in Mexico. I see. Do you think they have a contribution to maybe the general culture? Or do you think they stand out maybe uniquely, maybe by themselves, so to speak?
I do think that right now, for the time that we are living, they can like try to share a little bit of their culture, but not that much to not know like their own thing. Just like to let you know that they exist and that they have their own thing, like not get too much into it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Another thing I noticed that's very prominent is, there's many things I want to address, but I guess I can go in a couple sections, is I noticed you're placing the mariachis and the dancing aspect right at the center. Tell me why you did that. Why did you position the dancers? Of course, obviously there's mariachis here in the US, but the essence of the mariachis right at the center, I mean, that's very evident. Is there a particular reason why you centered the mariachis right at the center?
Because for what I have seen, like I do think that the music in here is like very influenced by the music in Juarez, and that you can like, even though you're not in Juarez, you can sense the music that Juarez has.
I see.
That is also why I put like the dancers in the middle, because like it's something very Mexican, but you can still see it quite a lot here in El Paso.
I see. Why do you think it's seen in El Paso, even though it's, I mean, we're a border city, but even though it's the United States, why do you think it's still very evident over here?
Because I don't think that even though it's just the United States, like 90% or more of the people must be Mexican. So even though it's Mexican culture that is translated here in the US, it has its difference, but it's still.
Gotcha. There's still that sense of the core of
Mm-hmm.
Mexican American is still very evident here, so to speak.
Yes.
Here's another thing I noticed. I did notice, and just for curiosity's sake, I did notice the slight darker shading over here in El Paso, and then I noticed the light shading on the left, including what I would describe as a firestorm of a sky. I mean, the way you merge the sky in such a manner, it's so, I mean, it's beautiful, right? It's beautiful, but it's also alarming, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that a little bit.
Because I have lived a lot in Mexico, I have noticed like the bad sides of it. So even though Mexico is a place that I love, it's also a place that I feel that is like quite insecure to live in. Like you can feel the violence that are in there, and in the protests even they do like these fires sometimes and broken things, something like that.
Gotcha.
And a little bit of it is like kind of translating here to the US slowly. So yeah, you can notice the violence that is also here.
So I see. So the darker essence in the U.S. It's is that to say that the violence is a little bit more, even though evident, is a little more subtle, and in Mexico
It's more alarming, like you can notice it more.
not so
here.
subtle. I see. And then of course I noticed right at the center, very much like the mariachis, we also have the essence of the Virgin Mary, and she's right atop. I'm not quite certain that is. It looks like a little tower, right? Like a little pyramid-like tower.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me about the little pyramid-like tower and the essence of the Virgin Mary as well.
The Virgin Mary is like has been like quite integrated in the both cultures. So I have seen like a lot of people that believe in the Virgin Mary here in also in Juarez. So I think that is like the things that unite them the most, the religion, because the Virgin Mary, I don't know if it's from here, but at least it's very integrated into Mexican culture. You can see the Virgin Mary in almost every church that you go in. So that kind of like also came here to the US.
I see. So it, just like the music, the Virgin Mary is also a unifying factor between the two border cities.
Yes.
Gotcha. Let's see. What else would I like to point out? Now I did notice the essence of the roses. I'm not sure if those are tied to the Virgin Mary, but I see the essence of the roses over here, and I see the essence of I'm not quite sure what those are. Lilies? Are those lilies or
It was a flower from here from El Paso actually.
okay.
I don't remember the name, but it was from here.
Oh, I see. It's native, kind of like common in El Paso, the
Yeah.
flower. And tell me about the roses over there. How about the roses?
For the roses, like I don't know, like Mexico has a lot of flowers that I could like to paint, but it's quite kind of integrated into the Virgin Mary because like it's the most it's the flower that you give the most to the Virgin Mary.
Gotcha. The honor to the Virgin Mary, right? The rose, so to speak. Now, you do two have, you also have two facades. You have the church over here in one sense, and then you have another building right here. Tell me about this building here, and then in comparison to the church, because I do notice the parallels in that sense.
I do think that the churches in Mexico are like more detailed and more extravagant, you can say, compared to the churches that are in here. Like you can pass for a church in here and notice that it's actually a church because it's like more subtle and more, I don't know, more normal, you can say.
I suppose.
But whenever you go to Mexico, you can notice right away where is the church. Yeah.
That's true. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, the intricacy, right, of the notion of a cathedral here. Whereas I'm trying to think if here in El Paso we actually have a cathedral, but not quite like in Mexico. Right, in Mexico,
Yeah.
Most cities actually have.
Yeah, I have seen even churches in Mexico that are like all covered in gold. Yeah.
So interesting. So interesting. Here's another little detail. I did notice the coloring of the buildings over here is a little bit, I guess, simplistic in terms of the colors. Very, neutral. I guess, white, black, gray, and of course we look at the buildings in Mexico, and they're brimming, they're popping, right? You see oranges and greens and yellows. Tell me about that.
In the US, I have noticed that they like follow more like a modern and simple style. Like you can notice all the houses and they look like quite the same. Like one is white and the other is brown, and the other is white and the other is brown. Like there is not like a lot of difference between them, and also because they do it like the modern thing. Like it's modern, is not a lot of color. It's more simplistic. But in Mexico, like whenever you go, you can see like a pink house, and then at the other side a green house, and then on the other side a yellow house. Like, obviously they have like the black and I mean the white and brown houses, but you can notice more color and more life in the houses in there.
Very interesting. Here I read I think it's many years ago, 15 plus years ago, where I read about I was very young and I read about the author Sandra Cisneros. I'm not sure if you've heard about her.
I think so.
She wrote a book called The House on Mango Street, and she used to live. I'm not sure if she still lives there. I'm pretty sure she might, but she had a home or still does, in San Antonio, and her house was painted like a very unique, almost bright purple type of home, the whole bit, and her house stood out noticeably. I mean, how many houses do we go bright purple? And the entire neighborhood was pushing with the city to force her to try to paint her house a different way, because they felt that purple color was too disruptive to the neighborhood. I mean, I thought it was really unique. Whereas in Mexico, I mean, anybody can paint their home any color they want.
Yeah, actually, in my house in Mexico, like my neighborhood painted their house like a bright green. So it's like very unique. They're having like a bright green there.
I gotcha. Well, Lily, I mean, you did a beautiful job here with the painting. I mean, from the sky. Oh, one little detail maybe before I forget. Tell me about the bridge. How are you conceiving of the bridge? I noticed that there's a bridge here in front, and then right behind it there seems also to be like a wall. Tell me about that a little bit.
For the bridge here, like it's like also another thing that unites them the boat, like the frontier that you have.
Okay.
Like everyone can pass through one to the other one. One tiny detail that I did is like you can notice that in here, right here, like you see like a whitening and a orange thing. So try to like is a family, so the man has to work in the farm. So he has his life in Mexico. So his wife and kids not living in there, but they're like separate.
I see. It gives a sense of the struggle, of the necessity, right, of the immigrant having to work over here because economically in Mexico, just the pay is terrible, right?
Yes.
I see. Very interesting. Very interesting. You know, and I hadn't, you know, I'm observing everything. I hadn't noticed those two little details. I'm so glad I asked. I'm so glad I asked. Very nice. You also, on a little side tangent, you had a painting that was honored at the Library of Congress.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that painting. What was the title of the painting?
The three-stage of knowledge.
The Three Stages of Knowledge. And
Yes.
tell me about that painting.
That painting, it was going to be something more for me. I love to read, so I thought that I wanted to do like a library. So I started doing my sketches and doing more libraries and things like that. But then like I also was like reflecting about it, like the libraries, the knowledge that it give you, and also like the different types of learning that you can have. Like some people can learn from seeing, other from reading, other from doing things, and things like that. That's why I put like 3 images that reflect like the different types of knowledge that you can gain.
I see. I see. And what an honor! I mean, how many
Yes.
people can say that their artwork is being presented there at the United States Library of Congress? I mean, that's fabulous.
Yes.
It's fantastic. Well,
They have also like the honor to go to a tour in the White House and a private tour in the Congress.
awesome,
Yes.
awesome. How did that make you feel?
It was awesome. Like it was honestly beautiful. I love the most like the gallery that I have in Washington. It was beautiful.
Wow. Is there a difference between maybe the culture in Washington that you notice and El Paso as a border city? Do you notice some key notable differences? And of course, I know you went there in a very short span of time, but
Yes.
are there any notable things maybe that you think are distinct from maybe?
I don't know, like I'm used to see a lot of Hispanics in here. Like I hear like Spanish every day of my life. I speak it every day. But when I was in there, I know that there is like Hispanics obviously, but you can't notice them like that much. We went to a Mexican restaurant, and it was good, but it's the same like actually restaurants in Mexico.
So you tasted the Mexican food and you said, this is not Mexican food, right?
Yeah, they tried to replicate, but it wasn't the same.
It doesn't taste the same.
Yes.
Oh, that's it. That too, right? I do notice the food stalls there, or the food tables,
Yes.
and that's true. There's also I would argue that do you notice differences between the Mexican food in Juarez and the Mexican food in El Paso?
Yes, like I don't know, like the chile and things like that. I also like I don't know, like the corn. Having a corn in here was very different to having a corn in there. Like I don't know, I just feel different. I don't know, even like an apple. I like more an apple in Mexico than here.
Really?
Yes.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. From an apple, right?
Yeah, like I don't know, there is something that changed.
I see. That's interesting. You know, I'm reminded a little bit of, this is not a self-portrait, but, and of course the painting is a little bit different, but I'm reminding of the paintings of Frida Kahlo where Kahlo, she has one, a self-portrait between the border of two cities. And on one, she's depicting Mexico as very organic, very nature-oriented, and of course on the U.S. side of things, it's very industrious.
Yeah, more precise.
And manufacturing industry and things of the sort. So I'm listening to you and I'm thinking that ideal of Mexico as things being more maybe natural and organic. Maybe it's not just a myth, right? Maybe it's essentially true. You know?
Yeah, one thing that I'm so like noticing Mexico is like they do see like the US like a first world, like the best of the best, and they do try to act like they're like U.S. citizen or something like that to be seen like a superior or something like that.
I see. Interesting. Interesting. Well, Lily, it's a beautiful painting, and I thank you so much for allowing me to depict it. And it's been an honor interviewing you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Despite the beautiful mirroring of El Paso with Juarez, not all synchronizations are without suffering. The artistic project Beaten with a Hammer by Marfa-based artist Bettina Landgrave, present within the Museum of El Paso, illustrates the diversity of gender-motivated violence within the Juarez-El Paso region. In these images, here she depicts the representative heartbeats of 500 victims. Here she names the woman's name and the manner in which these women were slain. Some related as unknown. The beauty of these hearts details what these women represent: a mother, daughter, or noted familial connection and correlation. Another El Paso Museum project, a mural entitled One Saturday by Mariana T. Olage, a testimony-based depiction of Olage upbringing in the Ruben Salazar apartments in South El Paso. What stands out amidst this particular mural, the vibrancy of the colors whose brightness depicts and infers a joyous remembrance of her childhood. Is this joy a state of innocence, one only a child can surface? Is that grass atop the concrete a misconceived memory? What precisely is the truth of Olage's mural? Perhaps the idea is simply one regarding the joy of a child on Saturday, regardless of the landscape, for the innocence of a child breeds joyful colors amidst the most barren of landscapes. The painting El Paso Smelter at Night by Alice Fremont illustrates the Osarco smelter plant environment as a foil to the more natural landscape of El Paso. The painting is, of course, abstract, but in the idealistic sense promotes a harm that can only be conceived of in that abstract idealistic sense, and it is realized in the contemporary sense. Across the border, amidst the stereotypes of a city that is mired with violence, corruption, and the constancy of mass genocide, is a unique place called Museo Galería de Arte, Laberinto del Quinto Sol, translated as Gallery of Art, Labyrinth of the Fifth Sun. Here, artist Benito C.J. illustrates that Marilyn is queen, but a slightly more refined and stoic-looking Frida is also queen. While it is true that such depictions portray a slight pop art postmodern ideal, it also conveys the message that universal pop culture icons are at play here, but not without depth. Life is difficult, so a little bit of desirable magic can be therapeutic. Carla de Lara's painting From Pain to Joy illustrates the nostalgic truths of Frida, who not only contracted polio at a very young age, but was severely injured while on a trolley that crashed with another vehicle. The harsh truth is certainly evident here, but Carla is attempting to replicate what Frida must have felt while painting her self-portraits. It is in essence a portrait of a self-portrait, and like Olage, promotes the joyous idea that even when the difficulties of life are evident, life can be okay. Similar to the mimesis of performance in the faith performances of the Via Crucis and Way of Light, this replica of the terracotta warriors situated within the environmental landscape of the background of the Sierra of Juarez synchronizes the Oriental with the Western. It is certainly obvious that such warriors are not evident within the El Paso Juarez region, but as present within the encompassing of an idea, there's a little bit of magic at play here. Amongst the most impressive displays here at this museum are Rafael Coronel's El Universo and El Universo Rojo, or rather the universe, the blue universe, and the red universe. Visually, both of these picturesque landscapes are arresting. The interpretations here are complex and difficult to arrive due to the many archetypal possibilities embodied here. The attire of both universes seems to be orthodox, and whether that denomination is correct or not, it carries a faith-based conception with it. Is it a battle of heaven versus hell, of the spiritual versus the sensory? Whatever the painting's meaning, it conveys a beyond, a meaning that grips us in terms of the magical and not in terms of the real. Muriel Garcia's The Soul of Reciprocity seems to infer that the truth of things is not granted by the sensory, but by the soul, by some innate spiritual type of entity. If this is a self-portrait, then I am understanding the sense of Garcia by means of the idea that a perception of Muriel Garcia is projected here. Ironically, it is as if Garcia is claiming, "This is not me, but only a shell of me. But it is also me because I am indeed the idea of me." Also in Ciudad Juarez is a restaurant museum known as the Custody of Saint Augustine, La Custodia de San Agustín. Here the artistry is much more historical and traditional, with a not so subtle revolutionary essence in its artistry. The image here depicts the post-colonial agenda between the colonizers and the colonized, with revolutionary icons like Benito Juárez, Pancho Villa, and at the center lies the church with the hallowed hand of God mediating such a struggle. All of these attributes are the attributes of in which a country is formed. The United States, too, directly amidst the Mexican-American War, included some of the same symbolic figures. What is most unique is a slight fable-like credibility toward the bull and the tradition of bullfighting. One can argue that rationally, that essence of bullfighting is of slight irrelevance to colonial battles between indigenous natives and the Spanish colonizers. However, as noted here, in mimesis, if you will, in attempting to halt the colonizer of its intent, if you recall Orozco's surfacing of the struggle between the indigenous with that of the mechanical and systemic, one can see how the natives seek the mythic magic of nature, and the colonizers seek the systemic. Such seems to be the case in this image here. Thus, the essence of bullfighting as a tradition is recognized here, but the interpretation of such an act is difficult to define. Observe this fresco painted into the very walls of La Custodia de San Agustin's museum. Here a bull is recognized as a protector against the colonizing, even if claimed to be Christian, acts of a Spanish priest. But that complicates the narrative of such a tradition. If the hero is the bull, an anthropomorphic type of hero, then why too is the bullfighter celebrated? Observe the glamorous, almost regal uniform of a bullfighter, symbolic, even if indirectly, of those traditional colonizing ideals. And who can forget the ballet-like shoes? After all, a bullfighter must colonize artistically, must he not? Granted, there's a slight sense of sarcasm here, but all kidding aside, that battle between the bull and the bullfighter is but one depiction that merges nicely within this borderland city of Ciudad Juarez. For the citizens on this side are at the margins of a land that was once their own, and the citizens on the other are divided in rooting for a time when the obstacle was but nature itself, and not particularly the heavy burdens of a steel fence. In the end, the bull is a hero, acknowledged as an entity that by visceral means is not human, but in the idealistic sense surpasses even the rationalization of Plato himself, for it is a form that is beyond any internal mirroring with the senses. It is a beyond that transcends the possibility of magic, of mythical within the real. Perhaps this is why the Borderland breeds interest, chaos, and a romanticism and yearning for an ancestry that, despite its struggles, was a struggle that lay in the hands of nature and not in the hands of a systemic or a machine. That is why a radio is radicalized and mythicized, for the narratives there necessitate the romanticizing between the indigenous and the colonizer. That is why it is entitled A Bullfight. For it is not simply a glorious horned entity that is revealed to be killed and eviscerated, but perhaps for some subtle fans, the bull on any given day just might prove to be mightier than the sword. This is why faith is prominent in the Borderland, perhaps arguably more than in any other part of the world. It is the land of hope. Even the attempt exceeds the burdensome gravitational force. It is the land of a belief in magic, mythicism, mystical possibility, and above all, in the transcendence of love. The Indian-born British-American novelist Salman Rushdie once said, "When people use the term magic, realism, they usually only mean magic, and they don't hear realism, whereas the way in which magic realism actually works is for the magic to be rooted in the real. It is both things. It is not just a fairy tale comment. It is a surrealism that arises out of the real. So if you can make it feel like that, then it works." So this is the essence of the Borderland, right? It is a land of mythical conceptions, of magic, of hope, of suffering, of a dialectic that sometimes cannot even be defined. And it goes from ideals of the murals, the magical essence found in those murals. It is in the notion of faith. And it is in the notion that you cannot stereotype the Borderland. It is far too complex and much too diverse for that. I hope you have enjoyed this series. Thank you.